Hey everybody, today I want to show you the types of tweezers that we currently stock and how to hold them without getting sore or fatigued or getting any aches and pains in your wrists. I also want to talk about the volume tweezers that we have and how to hold them for the perfect volume fanning pickup. All tweezers are hand tested. The volume tweezers are all hand tested by Julia Mann, myself, and they are shipped out with a seal of approval, which looks like this, which is on the back side, and this is cut in half, but you have like a full seal of approval at the back here. That means and indicates that they have been tested by myself and they have passed my personal pickup techniques. Yeah, I use between 3 to 5 different techniques, and I test every single tweezer up to 6D. And some of the volume tweezers I test even with different methods up to 10D. So they all work perfectly fine. Let's start with the classic tweezers. We have two types of classic tweezers. The first one here is called Julia's favorite classic tweezer. This is a very short tip tweezer and a very short tweezer as well, which is great for small hands. You can hold these with either 2 fingers or 3. Because I'm used to doing volume lashes a lot, I hold them with 3 because then I don't have to change in between. And then with ease pick up the lashes from the tray. When you are working on a lash tray and you're picking up tweezers, I always like to support my hands 2, sometimes even 3 fingers if I do classics perhaps, and then pick up the lashes that way, okay? These are picking up perfectly around the tips and about 1/3 in. Then we have the classics. These are the plasma classic tweezers. These are more of a longer L foot. These are also very, very good for beginners if you are not quite as advanced, because these have a much longer blade. So when you're picking up your lash from the tray, it is a little bit easier to see. Whereas if you have a very skinny, thin tip, sometimes you need to be a little bit more precise. However, a lot of people prefer the very thin, skinny, short tip because these are great to use in the inner corners, while these ones are just a little bit more difficult to use in the inner corners. So I will show you again how you hold them. Yeah, make sure you hold them down below, nice and low. We don't want to hold them up here because then we don't have any control. I like to support with a 3rd finger, but you can, you know what, if you're wanting to do lashes properly for years and years to come, use your 3 fingers straight away, because then when you're moving on to volume, it is a lot easier. So you have your 3 fingers on there, and then you can pick up with ease, okay? Very, very important. This is the way that you hold them. Take a mental picture and mental note of that. Now we're going to go through the isolation tweezers. There's 2 types, angled ones and straight ones, yeah? And the angled isolation tweezers, depending on the company you get them from, they all have a slight different angle. Some have just a little tiny tip and the same angle. Some have a longer tip or longer foot and pretty much the same angle. It's a very similar angle here. And some are more tapered down on a different angle that way as well. These ones here, they are the angled isolation silver footed tweezers. You can see they have a silver foot. These are a tiny bit sharper in the tip than these isolation tweezers are. These are my favorites just because they're nice and long and they just lie in my hand a little bit nicer than these ones. However, the tip is not quite as thin, but that is fine for me because I have perfected my isolation, so for me it doesn't matter. Now we'll show you how you hold your isolation tweezers. If you're left-handed, obviously, you know, you can hold them like this. It's the same if you're holding it the other way. So this is with my right hand now. You kind of have your thumb on the side. This one supports kind of on the side, and then you have this one leaning on top. And this is how you isolate. If your client head was here, you would go over the head, and because this is angled, it goes nicely into the lash line. Make sure you tilt the client's head back so you can really view the lash line so you know where to isolate. This one works exactly the same way. I personally don't like using straight tweezers, but I want to show you anyway how you hold them. So this is how you would hold your straight isolation tweezer. I don't like it because it kind of creates a bit more tension in my wrist, but I prefer to use angled tweezers just because they're much easier to get into the lash line. And you can see my wrist is not bent that way. It's more like a very soft bend. Moving on to our volume tweezers. My volume tweezers are all a little bit different, but you hold them all very, very similar. We have Julia's favorite on this side, which is the exact same tweezer than the Julia's Classics tweezer. Only these ones have passed my volume test, and the other ones, they have not. So I sell them as classic tweezers still. They're still great tweezers, you just can't use them for volume. So these tweezers are perfectly fine to use for people with small hands and a bit more finer and delicate hands, because they have a nice skinny tip. They're great to use in the inner and outer corners. One thing with all the tweezers, unless you are getting perhaps the perfect volume tweezer, because this one closes all the way, is that most of them you need to apply a bit of pressure. When you're volume fanning, you need to apply a lot more pressure than you would with a classic tweezer. I want to show you the difference quickly when you're picking up. So just watch me here. This is all I do in pickup. You can see I'm not putting any tension on it with my fingers. Now in comparison to volume, where I use 3 fingers, so we have the middle finger down the bottom, the pointer above, and the thumb is kind of in line with the pointer, slightly lower. And you can see when I pick up, can you see how I actually push? I am pushing down quite hard in comparison to just gently picking up. That is the main difference of holding a tweezer. These are the 90-degree volume tweezers. They close almost all the way in the base, not quite at the very end, but we don't ever pick fans up there because this is where we have our handle attached. And again, we place our 2 fingers very low so that we have this base supported, because we want to press. If we were up here, we wouldn't be able to give this enough pressure for the fan to stay. When you have a fan on here, you want to be able to shake it and then go back to normal and the fan is still there. Okay, this is how much pressure we need to use. So when you're working, when you're doing volume fanning and you're working off the tray, for example, you can see how my hand is very supported here. I go in, I press, and I take off. Perfect fan right there. We do the same with our perfect Russian volume tweezer. This tweezer is nice and short as well. Not quite as short as Julia's favorites though. Not quite as short. And it has a more of a thicker tip. This tweezer is great for beginners. Why? Because you cannot damage that tip very quickly and easily. And plus, in the beginning, unfortunately, it happens quite a lot. Perfect fan right there. That we are using too much pressure. So in the beginning, I would suggest get a tweezer that is a little bit more sturdy, perhaps like this one or even the 90-degree, rather than getting a tiny footed tweezer, okay? Then we have our Z-Tweezers. Now these are one of my favorites as well. These are angled so they fit right into the nose crevice, basically, of the inner corner or eye, yeah? This is amazing, and I will demonstrate this really quickly. So when you have your client lying down and you pick up your classic lash or your volume lash, because a lot of people buy these for classics as well, you have this area here which goes around the nose, which is amazing. Now we still want to ask our client to lean over to get into the inner corner, but with these tweezers we can get right in there, and we're still supporting ourselves a little bit on the cheek or even a little bit there to place, okay? All this is also explained much more in depth in my online courses. So with these ones, they are also the same angle as most of these volume tweezers are, but the main difference is this bend. The Elite Volume Tweezer, all volume tweezers can be used for classics. None of the classic tweezers can be used for volume though, yeah? So again, we have the same grip. These are called the Elite because they are made out of a different material. They're more expensive to do, and they have a beautiful aligned base, and they're all, again, all hand tested. So again, we support ourselves with our hand down there. We never ever try and do anything like that. Always have your hand supported. And go in and pick up your fan, okay? No matter what tweezer you're going to pick, whether you get any Julia's favorite, and I apologize about the fingerprints now, whether you're going to get Julia's favorite, the 90 degree, the perfect Russian volume, the Z-Tweezer, the Elite, Julia's favorite Classic Tweezer, the angled Isolation Tweezer, the angled Isolation Tweezer Silver Tip, the straight tweezer, or the Classic Plasma Tweezer. Either of the tweezers are very, very high quality. Like I said, all of the volume tweezers have been hand tested. In the case that a tweezer doesn't work, please do not freak out, because not every single tweezer will work exactly the same way they work for me. I'm advanced lash stylist. I always suggest you start with the beginner's tweezers because you don't have to apply as much pressure as you do with these skinnier ones, because the base does not close 100% and you need more pressure. It is very different going from classic lashing to volume lashing. Now, because these have all been hand tested by myself, it doesn't mean that they're going to work for you straight away. You will have to practice with them. Something usually takes 21 days to create a brand new habit and to get used to something new. So please make sure you practice, practice, practice. If these don't work for you, that usually means that you are not working them properly. You have not found a sweet spot, the exact spot where it is that you can pick up your fan, because some tweezers don't pick up all along the blade. You will have to practice out and try out a little bit where that spot is that they are going to pick up from. And if you haven't found it, then you need to keep looking for it, because I can promise you they're working 100% fine when they leave our Lash Tribe warehouse. Unfortunately, this is the case when people say they don't work for me, they send them back. Most of the time, 99.9% of the time, it is the person that doesn't work properly and not the tweezers. So if you return them, I will film the unpacking of your tweezers that you have sent back, and I will film the whole process of me testing them. If the tweezers are working, I will not give you a refund. It has happened once in 2.5 years that someone got a refund. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy the tweezers as much as I love creating them, and I will see you hopefully in one of the online courses. Take care. Bye bye.